Hello everybody and welcome to the Greekosophy channel. Stam again here with Greekosophy, the channel that tells you everything you need to know about Greece. And today we're going to make one of the most loved recipes of Greek children and Greeks alike. Makaronia Me Kima, which translates to spaghetti with minced meat. Now I know most of you will now turn and say, oh, he's gonna make spag bol. No. I'm not talking about spag bol or spaghetti bolognese or anything like that. You see, for some reason, and I'm Greek, but I know that infuriates Italians, every day somebody sees a bowl of pasta with some minced meat and sauce on top, they call it spaghetti bolognese. But that's not the case. Spaghetti Bolognese is a particular authentic Italian recipe, and if you want to know how to make it, which is completely different to what I'm going to make today or to what other countries make for their pasta, you can visit another YouTube channel which is my favorite when it comes to Italian food, and it's called Vincenzo's Plate. I will give you the link to it on the description of this video below. And pretty much like Greekosophy does with authentic Greek recipes in this channel, Vincenzo's Plate gives you all the authentic Italian recipes. And this is where I've learned how to make a authentic Italian spaghetti bolognese. But today we're making Makaronia Me Kima, a recipe that you will find in variations around Greece and around different households. But today we're making you the variation that we use in our household. Okay, now keep watching this video because it might seem simple to the people that do the cooking at home or the food is out there, but I'm going to give you as we go along some very useful tips as we go along. So let's start with our ingredients for the minced meat. Okay, so we have 5 grams of minced beef. Now you want the mince to have a little bit of fat in it because that fat will cook well and absorb all the juices. This is a 12% fat meat, okay? So 2 small onions. I grate my onions for this recipe. I don't blend them and I don't cut them because sometimes you get more larger pieces than others. So I just grate them in a cheese grater. And a couple of garlic cloves, again, I grate them. You need obviously extra virgin Greek olive oil. You need a glass of wine. I usually do red wine, but today I've run out of red wine, or actually I have plenty of red wine, but these are nice bottles and I don't want to use them for my food. So I have an open bottle of rosé and I'm going to use 1 glass. You may need to use more than that. We'll see later on. You also need some tomato paste or tomato puree. This is a double concentrated one. I prefer double concentrated one because you use less of it and it's thicker. We need 2 bay leaves, about 4 allspice little things here, and obviously our pepper and our salt. And also we're going to use about a teaspoon or slightly more of ground cumin. Okay, now you can use any type of pasta that you want for this dish. We usually use spaghetti, but any type of pasta, your favorite pasta, you can use. You can use tagliatelle or linguine or any other pasta. Let's cook. So we put our pan in a high heat or relatively high heat, and we want to add a little bit of or a lot of extra virgin olive oil. Right here I put about 50 ml, but I may use more. So you bring the oil to warm up, and then we're gonna put the minced meat. Now in this particular recipe you want to use as little of water in the sauce when you cook it as possible. Ideally not water at all. But if you're going to use water, as little as possible. So we will try to use the liquid that comes from the fat of the meat, from the wine, from the olive oil. And this is why on this particular recipe, you need to spend a lot of time stirring constantly all the ingredients that you're going to be adding, because you don't want the minced or any other ingredient to stick in the pan. Okay, so let's try a bit of our meat. Yes, it is ready. Now initially the mince is going to start sticking to the sides. Don't worry, because once we've added the wine, all this is going to come off. For now, we need to keep stirring our mince until it gets a nice brown color and starts getting nicely cooked. As a kid, every time I would come home and our mom would say, today we have Makaronia Me Kima, it was like Christmas for us. I used to love it. I used to eat a lot. I guess every child loves it, and grown-ups as well. So this is an extremely easy recipe, and you can make a lot of it and keep some for you to eat on the day, and then portion it and put it in the freezer, and it will keep there in the freezer. And every time you come home from work and you're tired and you can't be bothered doing something to eat, just take it out of the freezer, just chuck it with a little bit of water or wine in a pan just to defrost it until it starts cooking again, and then you boil a pasta and you stick it on top, and that's it. Obviously it would be better if you defrost the portion first. You can do that from the morning before you leave at work, so when you come back home it's ready, and you just reheat it and you add the pasta. So make sure at this moment in time you break all these little larger pieces of meat here, because you don't want to have little pockets of little balls of meat on your plate. You want the mince to be absolutely nice and nicely cut. So you can see our meat is brown, but we're still going to cook it for a little bit of time. We want to have our meat as much cooked as possible before we put the remaining ingredients, especially the paste. At the moment the meat is cooking with the olive oil that we've added and its own juices, so at the moment there's plenty of juice to go. I will try to find some stories to tell you while I'm cooking, so that video doesn't become boring. The problem is that if I start telling you stories, I'm not going to concentrate on my cooking, and I'm going to most probably burn the food. Now the other importance about this recipe is that you don't use fresh tomatoes or chopped tomatoes, okay? It's not going to become sort of like minced meat with a lot of sauce. Normally the sauce will come from the liquids in there and the tomato paste. So it would be more of a sort of red minced meat. Again, in other households in Greece, they do add a can of chopped tomatoes or fresh tomatoes, so that creates a sauce as well. In our family, we used both versions, depending on how your guests or the people prefer it. If people prefer it with quite a bit of sauce, so it covers the pasta, that's fine. But it depends really on your taste. You can try both of them. I will try and show you both versions while we do this recipe, and you can choose for yourself. As you can see, the liquid has almost been absorbed and the mince has started to sizzle. So it's time now to add our onions and our garlic. So give that a good stir as well, because some of the juice from the onions will be enough for us to continue cooking. But if you see that it starts getting stuck in the bottom, then you can add your wine at this stage. But at the moment, we're just making sure that the onions and the garlic are getting nicely soft in there as well, together with the mince. I continue stirring so the mince doesn't get stuck in the pan, and as you can see now there's not a lot of liquid, so it's important that I keep on stirring. I'm trying to do that while adding any liquid at the moment, until the onions are becoming softer and ready basically. You can see hardly any liquid there, but the onions are beginning to get softer. It's almost time to add the wine. Okay, it's almost time to add the wine, so let's add our wine in there. You can hear how it sizzles, and we want to keep on stirring again and let all the wine absorb. It will eventually disappear, and then we will need to continue stirring again. So the secret of this recipe is not to just add the mince and brown it for a little bit and then add all the sauces and let it cook. You try to cook the meat at this stage as much as possible and basically add the rest of the ingredients later on in the process. Something as well that you might not know, basil in tomato sauces in Greece is not a very popular herb. That's mainly a popular herb with Italians. In Greece we use oregano, sometimes thyme, but mainly oregano. But when we make minced meat, normally our herb, let's say, of preference is bay leaves. So the wine has almost evaporated, so we need to restart. Apologies that I'm right-handed and it's not easy to avoid putting my hands in there. I will try to do it with my left hand, and if I ruin the dish, I will blame you guys. Okay, not as easy to do it with your left hand. Maybe that's a good practice for me to become both-handed in the kitchen. So the meat has started sizzling again, as you can hear it, an indication that there's hardly any liquid left. So at this stage, we can check on our meat. It's not ready yet, obviously. Don't be fooled by the color or the amount of time that you have been stirring it. It will still take a while to become proper ready to eat. But at this stage, it's been cooking for a while, the onions are there and are ready, so it's time to add the herbs and spices. So in goes the bay leaves, in go the 4 allspice, and you will be surprised that Greeks use cinnamon. A bit of a teaspoon, if that, depends on how strong you want the cinnamon taste to be. And at this stage, we're gonna use 2 tablespoons of our tomato puree. Quite large tablespoons. 1, 2. Now, I'm gonna stir it and then give you an important tip to know. Keep on stirring it rapidly because, as you can see, there's hardly any liquid there, so you don't want anything to burn at this stage. So here is the tip that I didn't even know until a couple of years ago when my family told me. Basically, most people, when they do a sauce and they use tomato paste, they, add the tomatoes, they add the water, and then they add the paste to cook together, so the whole, let's say, sauce becomes thicker. However, they miss an important thing, that if you actually add the paste at the start with the spices, as we did now, before you add any more liquid or any tomatoes, what happens now is that the tomato paste, actually cooks with the rest of the ingredients, and it gets all the taste from them, it gives its taste to them, and your dish, your minced meat, will become 10 times more flavoursome by doing this. Otherwise, if you just add at the time you add the water, it just thickens the water and does absolutely nothing else. So what I found, and then I tasted it and I saw the difference, it makes a massive difference to the taste of your mince. Look at that. Our mince has now got a nice color, and I keep on stirring it constantly because there is no liquid whatsoever now. The only slight liquid comes from the tomato paste, which is not a lot. So at the bottom you will see it will catch a bit. Don't be afraid, because we will add a little bit more of olive oil, but at the moment I just want to make sure that my tomato paste is cooked nicely, and you can smell a really deep tomato smell at the moment in the kitchen. So at this stage, it's really to your own taste. A word of warning that by doing it like this with the tomato paste and by using hardly any water, the outcome, this particular minced meat, will be quite heavier to your stomach, let's say, than if you used water. Okay, the water would be lighter to your stomach. However, the flavor will be stronger, will be deeper, will be a lot better. Okay, so with people that you know, have problems with their stomachs, etc., then after doing this, it's better to also use some water and then allow the minced meat to cook a little bit in the water and thin out. But here we're sticking to the original. So at this point, I'm gonna add a little bit more of olive oil. Just enough to allow all this to cook. Let's add now our salt and pepper. And after a couple of stirs, we will try and see what else it may need. So let's give it a try. At this moment, I don't think it needs anything else. So now that we have done the part with all the ingredients and our mince is halfway there, now we're gonna add some boiling water. So time to lower the heat and add a little bit of boiling water, not too much. We don't want it to sort of boil the mince, we just want it to cook. So you can see here, there's enough heat to go about. And we can add a little bit more because the water has been evaporated by all the ingredients. Now, depending again as to who's gonna make this recipe, instead of water, they can add more wine, or they can add a combination of wine and olive oil. So, you know, it can become quite heavy or quite light. I sort of prefer it somewhere in the middle, you know. But it is at this stage that if you wanted to make a sauce with a lot of liquid in it, and turn it into a tomato, let's say, sauce, you add the chopped tomatoes together with the water. So you add the chopped tomatoes and you let it then cook nicely until it's ready. And basically, whenever it needs more water, you keep on adding water. But as I said, we're not going to do that. So we have, as you see, liquid here. But I'm going to add a little bit more wine. Don't worry, the alcohol evaporates, so it's still suitable for children. So you can see we've turned the heat down a bit because now we want it to, you know, cook nice and slowly until our mince is ready. I will still continue to keep stirring. But at this stage, I'm gonna slightly let it add water up to the point where the mince is there and cover it and put the heat to a bare minimum, because if it's covered, it's gonna boil. So you essentially want it to slowly boil. Well, not boil, cook, sorry. That's why you don't put a lot of water. You don't allow it to boil. It cooks. And again, it depends on the preference of the people. You know, once the mince is ready, it's ready to eat, it's edible. You know, if people want some more sauce, with a pasta, you can have it with so much water left, so much liquid left. Otherwise, you can leave it to cook a little bit more, so there's hardly any liquid there, and you just use the minced meat and you toss it with the pasta. Another tip for you to know is that once the meat is ready, you can actually empty all of it into another pan or another bowl. But don't wash this particular pan. Instead, since you're going to boil some pasta, just fill it up with your water and boil the pasta in there. What is going to happen is that your pasta, rather than boiling in just boring water, it boils with all the juices and the flavors that have remained in the pan. So your pasta gets flavor as well, and then we'll get the minced meat as well at the end. A word of warning, obviously if you don't plan to eat it today, and you plan, let's say, to eat it in 2 days' time, I would not recommend leaving the pan dirty and then putting the pasta there after 2 days, alright? No. Just making sure for those of you that do not spend much time cooking, you don't get the wrong idea. So as you can see, again the liquid slowly is evaporating, and at this stage I'm gonna try again. Whenever you cook, always constantly taste your food. Otherwise, if you don't taste it, then you don't know what the final outcome tastes like. And once you serve it, it will be too late to make amends. Okay? So, for me the mince needs a little bit more cooking and slightly a bit more salt, just a little bit. But apart from that, I am happy with the overall flavor, just what I wanted. And our food needs a little bit more water. At this stage, because our minced meat is almost ready, we make sure we add a little bit of water, not more. So we're ready when it's ready to take it off the pan. It goes without saying that if it has liquid there and you take it off the pan, if you let it rest for a bit, that liquid will be absorbed. So if you want it to be a little bit saucier, make sure that you have enough liquid there to last. Now personally, I prefer it like this, but Nandia prefers it more liquidy, so we will add a little bit more water towards the end to have it a little bit runnier. Again, let's taste. This is the prerogative of every cook and chef. The meat is almost ready. The sauce is really tasty. So one final bit of water, just to cook it one final time, then allow the rest to set. And by the time it sets and it's ready to be served, it's going to be just a little bit of liquid, enough to coat the pasta. Now, as I said, with 500 grams of pasta, depending on how much, 500 grams of minced meat, depends on how much you want or not. It It can be used for like 4 portions, 6 portions. It depends really how much you want, how large your portions are. I'm gonna cook the pasta in there, so you can see what I mean about coating the pan or not washing the pan. So I'm gonna take it off heat now, as it is right now. So you see there's still enough liquid there, but by the time it rests and it cools down, that liquid, most of it will have evaporated. So I'm gonna let it cool down, and when it's time for me to make the pasta, I will be back and show you the rest. So we've emptied our minced meat to this pot here. It's now cooled down, and this is the pot that we used to make it. So I've put water in this pot. Don't be scared of this. This is just the juices from that has stuck to the pan. The water is absolutely clear, and this is all the juices from the pan. So I'm gonna boil my pasta in here, and all the flavors are gonna go in the pasta. So I'm gonna empty some of these ingredients in a plastic bowl, so I can keep some in the fridge for another day. And I'm only gonna keep the minced meat I'm gonna use for today's pasta. We're gonna make about 2 portions, so I need to make sure that I keep enough. So enough for 2, and then I've kept enough for another 2 portions at a later date. Now, as I said before, I personally prefer it as it is now. So all I need to do is just simply reheat it a little bit in the pan. But because there's a second person that's going to be eating, Nadia, and she prefers to have a little bit more sauce, it's up to you. Again, if you like it light, you sort of add a little bit of water and warm it up and let it for a few minutes cook to absorb most of the water and retain some of the sauce. You can add a little bit of wine or a combination of the two. I will decide what to do. I'll show you in a minute. So we're preparing our spaghetti. So normally the recommended portion is 100 grams of dry pasta per person. But that's not the usual one for Greeks. So I might use a little bit more for me. I'm gonna have spaghetti, and Nadia is gonna have something else. Okay, so I went for a combination of a little bit of wine and a little bit of water. So as you can see, just slightly to cover the mince. And I'm gonna bring it to the boil and let it boil for a bit, so it doesn't just stay as wine and water, but it is absorbed within the meat. Obviously, the best thing to do is just, once you have the mince ready, you just serve it immediately. But because today we made it and we kept it there for a while, it has cooled down. So this is a way of doing it. Another thing I forgot to mention, I know that the size of the pan is quite small to cook pasta. Normally when you cook pasta, you need a big pan and plenty of water. But I did this so I can show you the example of what I was telling you, of how to use the leftover juices that have stuck in the pan after you've made something to boil a pasta in there in order to make it taste really, really good. So my pasta is ready, my spaghetti is ready. I've just tried it. So let's drain them first. Remember how our pan was after the mince? See, after the pasta, apart from this little corner there, it's done. Pasta. However, I am not one to put the pasta on a plate, then on top the minced meat or the sauce, and then the cheese. I like to make the most of it before it goes on my plate. So what I'm gonna do is return pasta in the pan, add my minced meat, just add it there, add it all there, and now I can turn and I can toss so it reaches all the corners, north, south, east, west of my pasta. And now I can add it to my plate and sprinkle it with lovely cheese. So this is my pasta on the plate, and now we're adding the lovely, lovely cheese. Now we're using a Greek cheese called graviera. While we're doing that, we're also making sure that the graviera is going, also make sure that the graviera is going everywhere around our pasta. A little bit more, thank you very much. And our Makaronia Me Kima is ready.